Pop, what's going on, man?
How you doing, son?
Living the dream, man. Living the dream. Back to the off season. It is whole different world, man. Whole different world.
Got a text from Dominic and said, "What the heck are we going to talk about today?"
Yeah, goodness, man. I mean, it's bleak out there. You can definitely tell there's definitely a change of pace in terms of what commands our minds this time of
But
year,
stick
and we're all
around. We got
trying
a
to
lot of
figure
good
it
stuff.
out. Been baking a lot of pizza, been doing a lot of things differently, just trying to fill the time. It's Yeah, it's interesting, but we got a lot of good stuff to talk about today, as we always do. Found a few topics. I think that's one of the benefits of us not having like 4 hours a day to fill, as opposed to like one podcast a week. Definitely can like boil it down and keep it like hit on all the good stuff. Despite us trying to make this podcast go for 4 hours sometimes, but guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And big news this week, we got the NFL Combine coming up. We will hear from Dan Quinn and Adam Peters on that. You'll hear from us about that next week. We'll touch on that. And the first kind of fun headline and quote to get into here is just be a quick topic before we get into our main meat and potatoes of the day, which is our top free agency targets for the Commanders in this offseason. But just a quick hit on that. I think this quote from David Blau should get all Commanders fans sitting up a little more straight this Monday. Everybody's at work a couple minutes early.
Right.
We're all feeling a little bit better, right? And that is David Blau said, quote, this thing is going to be built around how do we get Terry McLaurin 10 targets a game? What are your thoughts on that, Pop?
I think it's great. I mean, I think a lot of times we complain, about Terry not getting enough targets. It was tough last year, obviously, because he was in and out. But in 2024, it took a while to get him going. And if you look at the number of targets Terry tends to get versus other top 10 receivers in the league, it just seemed like it was never featured enough. And only good things happen when he gets the ball in his hands. I mean, he's a great contested catch guy. He's a great tracker of the ball. He's got excellent speed, maybe not top end elite speed, but excellent speed. So he can be a deep threat too. He can run the slant and get you those tough yards there. And I think it shows the respect that many in the organization actually have for Terry. So love hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been what, 4 or 5 offensive coordinators that we've been praying would say something like this and would actually act on it. So we heard from Cliff. We're gonna get Terry more involved, and then last season, and then we saw what happened with the offense when Terry did get more involved. It was only good things. And now this season, obviously, he missed 8 games. So what can you do, right? How can you get a guy more involved that's not playing, and then he didn't have his quarterback for the majority of the games that he was back for? So it's tough to judge off last season, but I think if you get 17, I mean, we've said it. I just don't see how anything bad could happen from him getting the ball more. So I think if it's David Blau's making it a priority, and you look at the offenses that he's been a part of, you look at what happened in Minnesota. He was there around the same time as prime Justin Jefferson. You look at what happened in Detroit. Amon-Ra St. Brown is good for like 14, 20 targets a game. And you look at the best offenses in the NFL, Seattle, LA, right? These offenses are feeding their number one guy, and they're just finding different ways to get the ball in the best players' hands outside of the conventions, which is just, well, he's an X, so line him up on the outside and let him run straight faster than the guy next to him. They're doing so much more than that. They're bringing guys out of the backfield, bringing guys into the slot position. You see bigger bodies moving to the slot position now to get that free release. And I think it's going to be really good for the offense. It should make the transition easier for Jaden Daniels into this under center, this new offense look. Hopefully, I think this is very exciting. Now I want to see it happen.
It also frees up other players, right? When you run them and you target them like that, and you make defenses, sorry, have to account for Terry McLaurin because they know there's going to be a featured part of your offense, frees up the other guys. And we're all hoping, going to be a hot topic later in the pod. We're all hoping they sign more weapons, right? So I think that it's only goodness. It's a big year for Terry. There's been talk that he's 35 million against the cap next year, and that essentially this is kind of the last year of his deal. I'm hoping that's not the case, but obviously he's got to show something this year, right? I mean, every time he played last year, he played really, really, really well, despite who the quarterback was before and after he got hurt. So you got to give him credit for showing up every time, and he just gives it all he's got. But it's a big year for him, and then I hope that it becomes a multi-year deal. And if they've got to restructure or figure out how to soften that cap hit, that's something that they can get done. But I think it's great to hear, and it shows that what folks in the organization, maybe a Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, really think of Terry McLaurin as a true number one receiver.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine if you're Adam Peters, right, and you got David Blau coming to you going, AP, I need a real number one receiver. AP's going, I just lost 2 years off my life stressing out about signing this guy last
That's
summer and
right.
getting yelled at every day by
That's right.
everybody on Twitter. He's in the building. Make it work with this guy, And I
That's
think
right.
I hope they will. And I think it's as we move into our free agency targets, I think it's an interesting thing to consider is that if he's talking about let's get Terry McLaurin 10 targets a game, what message is that sending in terms of what you're looking for in free agents and also what
Fair.
if you're a free agent wide receiver and you hear the OC is saying, "Oh, they're going to get Terry 10 targets a game." Maybe if you want to be a number one alpha guy, maybe Washington's not the place for you. It's an interesting thing to think about. So, should we get into our free agent talk, Pop?
Let's do it. I love it.
So, free agent legal tampering period starts March 9th, which is about 2 weeks from today, I think, 2.5 weeks. Um, it'll be It's going to be a zoo, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of news all at once. Official start of
Yeah.
free agency will be March 11th. Um, and the Commanders have 74. Well, I hope it's not 74K, 74 million cap space. 74K would be an issue. If
Is
74
that what I
million
wrote?
cap space, pop out 74K on the outline.
Damn. Did me dirty.
They have 74 million of cap space, and they will add an additional 18.5 million with the release of Marshawn Lattimore and then potentially some others. So, going into free agency, what are your initial thoughts, Pop?
Well, yeah, we talked about our top positions in need, and obviously there's needs all over the um, football field. But you know what? Initial thoughts, and I linked an article in here that we're going to use kind of a guideline from USA Today. There's a lot of people will talk about Adam Peters, um, you know, the misses, right? They want to focus on the misses. But if you go back to 2024 and you look at some of the hits, the multi-year contracts to people like Frankie Louvu, Tyler Biadasz, uh, Dorrance Armstrong, right? These are guys that are still core parts of this group. That's what you want to see more of. Maybe that and a big splash, right? Because I think that maybe it's a situation now where we do need to go after a guy and not get outbid at the top of the market. And then my other observation looking at this list is that there's a lot of great names out there. If free agency goes well, you can go into that draft and you could get to where, and this is a little bit of a teaser for a quick topic we're going to have later in the pod. Maybe you make that luxury pick. Maybe you don't worry so much about drafting for need, and you can draft best player available. So yeah, those are my quick thoughts before we get into actually talking about the guys we're interested in.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting with free agency, right? Because you see this big list and you go, oh, there's all these free agents available. And the bottom line is the guys you're drooling over, right? And I mean, Javante Williams, perfect example, just signed a 3-year big extension yesterday, right? The guys you're excited about, oftentimes, the teams that already have them are excited about. And we're seeing this growing trend in the NFL of guys trying to not let talent out of the building. And it's
Yeah,
almost becoming interesting where it's more like the NBA, and then if you want to get a star, you got to make a big trade sometimes, or you got to get them in the draft. So it's getting interesting in that regard. We're not seeing free agency the way I feel like it used to be when I was a kid, and maybe that's just because I lived through the Dan Snyder era, so we were spending a lot of money on big name free agents, right? But we're not seeing it it's almost like you're getting the B guys in free agency, the B plus guys you get in free agency. It's hard to get A plus premium talent
That's
in
very
free
true.
agency that doesn't come off the back of some kind of holdout, some kind of drama, some kind of you know mess that involves a player like a Deshaun Watson situation, missing a year of their prime, missing 2 years of their prime, and then not being the same when they come back. So it's interesting. It's interesting to follow. But I just did a quick Command F on that USA Today article and put in Commanders. And I think we could talk about our positions of need, but I would also like to talk about the guys that USA Today specifically has
That's
said
great.
are the guys that the Commanders would be the best fit for the Commanders. Maybe we can react. It's only three guys, so maybe we can react to those three
Yeah, yeah, I like
guys.
it.
So we said both. We are in agreement on the first top two positions of need, which are edge and corner, right?
Yep.
Corner is a position, again, very rarely you see premium corners become available on the market. Same with edge. There is one this year, and we'll talk about that one. It's interesting. But edge and corner, we were both in alignment on for the most need. I think you may take a corner at number 7, which we got the whole rest of the we got from now until April to talk about. But I think you might take a corner at number 7, and I think that would be an excellent pick. But I said safety. Pop said wide receiver. Let's get into it. So, if we're looking to target these 5-year, multi-year deals in free agency, and let's keep in mind what Peters had said, right? Younger, faster. That seems to be the trend here. Are there any guys, Pop, that jump off the page to you, or somebody that you really want to see in one of those big long-term deals in this free agent class?
Yeah, there are a couple like, I like um there's some interesting names at the top of this list, right? But then there are also kind of those guys that you wonder, like a Trey Henderson, 31. I certainly wouldn't be have a problem going after him. And in fact, I would be really excited. I still think he can play, and he's not super old at 31. I mean, some of these defensive ends have shown they can be productive into their mid late 30s, but the price tag is probably going to be something that may not be that attractive, right? But one name that I kind of liked in that offensive, linebacker, defensive end is an Adafe Owe, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but USA Today has him at number 6, and they kind of describe him as a guy that wasn't really a full time starter with the Ravens or the Chargers, but he's kind of an ascending player, kind of reaching his peak. Somebody that's had 17 and a half sacks and 98 pressures as a part time starter over the last 2 years for those two teams. So is that guy an ascending player, maybe similar to what you thought of a Javon Kinlaw that comes at a more reasonable price tag that you can get excited about? So at edge, he's a guy I think to look out for, because some of the guys at the top of the list, like a Jalen Phillips, is Philly going to really let him go? And is he really going to want to go? I think Trey Henderson's going to leave Cincinnati. He's been itching to do that for a long time. So, but I also think he's going to go after the highest bidder. He's going to go after the cash, and you can't blame him, right? So at Edge, I
Yeah,
would say, just starting with Edge, I would say that's an interesting name for me to look out for.
yeah. I wonder if Edge. It's so hard with Edge, man, because like you said,
They
I
got to
like
add
the
something. They
you
have
do.
to.
You have to add something, and I think not only do you have to add something at the top of the depth chart, but you have to add probably a few guys down the depth chart as well. Because you've got guys. I mean, and now last year, and I hammered the table over this. You lost Armstrong, you lost Wise, and you lost Jean Baptiste. Who Jean Baptiste specifically is a guy that
Yeah.
didn't get a lot of talk about, but now you're looking at these are your three top outside of Von Miller, who I know I got a little bit of flack for it. And thank you for the comment. But if you look at when Von Miller got those sacks, they were just never meaningful. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I agree.
And I'm not. sack numbers are definitely like it's the same thing with Dante Fowler. It's like he had 10.5 sacks, and I was saying we should have kept him, and I stand by that. Same time, he had like one game where he had 4 sacks, he had another game where he had like three, and then the rest were, trickled throughout. So you can't just chase sack numbers on these edge guys, and I don't think like I don't see any edge guys. I like Owe. I think that's a decent pick. Jalen Phillips is hard because Philly, like at a certain point, they can't keep kicking all this salary money down the road, and somebody's got to go. So you wonder if it is Phillips because he's had a lot of injury concerns, but yeah, he will be. These guys are going to get paid a ton of money. These free agent edge
Are you
rushers. I
willing to
think
be the highest bidder for Hendrickson?
if it's a 1 or 2 year deal, sure, but I'm not willing
Yeah,
to sign Hendrickson to 3-4 years.
it's not going to be a
Um,
1 year deal. He's not going to sign
yeah,
for 1 year.
I think
Yeah.
if you can sign him for 2 years, cool. But I think anything more than that is a little
Maybe it's
bit.
one of those 3 year deals where the third year isn't really a real year,
Yeah,
right?
something like that would
Where
be
you can get
cool.
out of it. Yeah.
Something like that would be cool. But looking across the board here, there's three names that they link to the Commanders. First one is a name that I would absolutely sign to one of those 5 year, multi year, wow, this is now the highest paid person at their position in football, and that is Kyle Pitts. I would absolutely sign Kyle Pitts. He's number 8 overall. And we are listed as the third best fit for him. I don't know if they order these fits, but it's Falcons, Buccaneers, Commanders for Kyle Pitts. And when you saw what Zach Ertz did in this offense, right? And some of the things that we gave Zach Ertz maybe some flack for, if Pitts is able to take that role over and get those targets and acquire that trust of Jaden Daniels with his athletic ability, and he all of a sudden, like, imagine if Zach Ertz could break a couple tackles and then run at 4.5 speed down the field. Imagine what he would have done in the offense these last couple years. And I think if you look at this Blau system, if you look at what the tight ends in Detroit were doing, if you look at what the tight ends of Minnesota were doing, if you look at even what the tight ends of Washington were doing, Hawkinson, Laporta, Ertz, these are guys that are going to be a key focus of the offense. Kyle Pitts is now he's now kind of blossomed with some better veteran quarterback play down the stretch last year. And he never had a real play caller in Atlanta. Let's call a spade a spade. In his time in Atlanta, he never had a good offensive mind calling plays, ever. And we don't know if David Blau is that. We hope he's that, but we don't know. But I think overall, this would be the most promising situation Kyle Pitts has been in his career so far if he were to come here. How do you feel about a Kyle Pitts signing, Pop?
It'd be really exciting. No question about it, right? We cannot run it back at tight end. We just can't. None of the guys have really proven they can be, pass catching threats. Tight end is such a safety blanket for, the quarterback, as we saw with Zach Ertz, and Zach Ertz is certainly not at the prime of his career, although he got everything out of himself that he could, which you've got to appreciate. So Kyle Pitts for sure. I really like someone who's a lot further down the list that I think could be a real gem. And I was talking to the Ravens insider about it um, just a couple of nights ago. Isaiah Likely. I really like Isaiah Likely because I think he's shown that he can be a dynamic receiver. I don't think he's been featured enough or taken advantage enough. He's also a really good blocker, and he's a better, maybe all around guy. So I think that I want to land one of those two guys, but I'd be fine if it was Likely, and maybe we can get him at a better deal. We almost certainly can get a better deal for a Likely versus Pitts, who's going to be at the top of the market there.
Here's the thing, and here's why I'm willing to go top of the market on Pitts and why I think it would be a really heady signing. Tight ends don't make a lot of money. It's like signing a premium running back. It's not a lot. It's not like you have to spend 35. I mean, these wide receivers now are getting paid $35 million a year. And if you get a Kyle Pitts at SportRack has his projected AAV at around 10 million, they have Isaiah Likely at
Yeah,
about 8.8 million. So it's
Yeah,
really
that's
only
a
a $2
great
million
point.
a year difference. And
It's a
I
great
think
point.
I love Isaiah Likely. Don't get me wrong. I think that would be an awesome signing as well. But I think the talent gap versus the value gap is probably pretty wide there. Now, what the difference is, I think somebody would be more willing to get silly and overpay for Kyle
That's my
Pitts
point. That's my
than
point.
an Isaiah Likely.
Yeah.
So I think it's a
Either
sharp point
one of
there,
them,
Pop.
I'm dancing. I'm dancing around celebrating. I only concern with Pitts is just a little bit of how he's disappeared at times, but you think that's a little bit more to do with the offensive play calling situation or maybe the quarterback situation there, which has been a little unstable the
Yeah,
last couple of years, which is fair. As long as you know that the character, there aren't, and I'm not saying I know that there are any character issue with Pitts. Don't come after me for that. I just know that at times they felt like he hasn't really fully shown up, for all the games. And of course, once it got to be contract year time last year, he balled out quite a bit. So as long as you think you can really get that consistent performance out of him, I'm cool. But likely, maybe I'm a little tainted. I heard a interview from him, and he seems like a guy that's just fired up and ready to go and wants to be the feature tight end. Said he learned behind Mark Andrews, but he's ready to be the guy now. So I would love it if they landed one of those two guys.
yeah, me too. Either one I'd be just fine with. Now, moving on to the
Yeah,
defensive side of the ball, going a little further down the list, number 14 here. Not too much further, 5 spots, I guess, 6 spots. Devin Lloyd was a first
yeah.
round middle linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's running as as USA Today calls him, their defensive quarterback. He's a stud, man. Devin Lloyd's a dog, and he didn't do much until this year. But what he did this year kind of reinvigorated that defense and turned that defense into one of the more underrated units in football, probably one of the most underrated units in football, in my opinion, that Jacksonville defense. And I think this one's interesting because Jordan McGee, Jordan McGee, Jordan McGee, Jordan McGee, Jordan McGee. That's all we hear. That's all we've heard. That's all we've said, right? Right? We tried to jump on the Jordan McGee bandwagon at one point in time. I'm rooting for the kid. I think he could be a very good player. I think he's still very raw and just doesn't have a lot of in-game experience. And when you're looking at we need blue chip talent on the defensive side of the ball, and you don't just need two linebackers. Is everybody clear on that? Does everybody understand that you need more than two linebackers to play football in the NFL? And a guy like Bobby Wagner might be retiring. You don't know what's happening with Bobby
Yeah, I
Wagner.
think I think
And
if you sign a Devin Lloyd, then I don't see how you bring Wagner back.
yeah, if Wagner, it would be a situation where Wagner wants to come back at a more limited role or doesn't, but he's shown no signs on the field of being able to play less than he's currently playing. He's always available. He's always performing at or above average. I think Lloyd would be an aggressive young move that is going to cost you top of the market. I think this might be a situation where he doesn't even become available. I think if you're Jacksonville and you're ahead of schedule on this year one rebuild, you don't let Lloyd out of the building. You'd be crazy to.
It
Um,
kind of depends on your assessment of your current guys, right? I mean, we both have an identified linebacker as our one of our top three needs. Doesn't mean they can upgrade at every position on the field, bar quarterback, in my opinion, right? So I'm not gonna be unhappy with any, like you said, bringing in a blue chip or upgrading linebacker for sure. But what do they think about McGee? What do they think about Madrano in a year or two? You know, what do they think about bringing Wagner back? Maybe it's not where you want to spend top of the market money, but I certainly wouldn't hate it. I kind of like the guy that's right behind him, safety Brian Cook would be a guy that, yeah, I know that, we don't have the commander's name tied to him in the article, but, I think he'd be a guy that would be an excellent addition. And safety's a
yeah,
position of need for sure.
I agree. Yeah, the Devin Lloyd thing's a little tough. But yeah, I think ultimately, like you said, it's just going to come down to
Or a
what do they
Kobe
think
Bryant, if you could pry him
about.
out of the Seahawks.
I don't think anybody in Seattle is going to turn around and leave, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, you're probably right.
it's a matter of what do you think for what do you think of Jordan McGee, and is Jordan McGee really, and like let's all look ourselves in the mirror here. Is our fourth round draft pick, who hasn't really consistently played the last two seasons, missed most of the first year with injury, is he ready to be the heir apparent to Bobby Wagner? Maybe he is, but maybe what are the odds? And is this the type of guy that defies those odds? Let's be very real about it. I'm not saying I don't believe that he could be. I'm saying I don't know. And
Like we
if you have
saw
an
some good things
opportunity,
out of him.
we saw some good things out of him, but is seeing some good things enough to trust the brain trust of your defense around this guy? I don't know. I'm not an NFL coach. But if you have an
True,
opportunity to
true.
upgrade at a blue chip position, and a position that I think has a massive effect on the defense one way or the other, you might want to take it. That being said, you can't sign all of these guys, and I think this is probably the least likely on this list, just because I don't think he comes available. One more guy, wide receiver, which is Pop's third most wide receiver with obvious ties. As a matter of fact, Pop's third biggest position of need here is Juwan Jennings. Now,
Yep.
this is an interesting one because he former quarterback, big guy, big body, um, absolute dog. He's the type of guy that would fit in here. This is actually the only guy that they have Commanders number one on the list for most likely place to land. Obviously, his ties with Adam Peters are there. What do you make of bringing in Juwan Jennings, Pop, to be like a 1B to Terry?
Well, you look at the other, maybe big names on the list, which Alec Pierce is at the top of that list. And he's been a guy that's been given a lot of run. I guess actually, Rashid Shaheed is another guy that's talked about. The problem with an Alec Pierce is that people say he's kind of a Terry 2.0, and he may demand big money. Now, I'd be excited about getting an Alec Pierce for sure with his talent. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a really good complement to what you get with Terry. He's finally getting that big receiver in Juwan Jennings that I'm speaking of. Like you said, he's a dog. He's a great locker room guy. I would be really pleased. Another name that's been linked recently is Mike Evans. But if I would say Mike Evans would be kind of a plan B or C given his age and given the fact that he's contemplated retirement for quite a while. Great player. I think Mike Evans would be terrific in terms of the 2026 season because I certainly think he's got a year or two left in the tank. But if you could go out and get a Juwan Jennings, I'd love that. I think he'd probably be, given the value of the player and the compliment that he gives you, and finally having a big play receiver, I like that signing a lot. But can you pry him out of 49er Bill? That I'm not so sure.
Well, if anybody can, it's Adam Peters and 49erville again in a situation where like they've paid a lot of guys, right? They've kicked that salary cap down the road
That's
a
fair.
while, and are they in the position to pay? They're also going to have to take on, or no, I don't know what one, and God's name is going on with Brandon Ayuk's contract. But I think he said he's willing to just not take the money, so I don't know exactly how that works against their cap. But that's a guy that is going to command. I mean, his average market value right now is 22 million on the open market per sport rack, and they actually have him looking to be the second highest paid receiver behind George Pickens, who George Pickens is probably going to get over 30 mil a year. I don't think George Pickens is getting out of Dallas. I think they'll tag him
No,
if they have to.
they've already pretty
Um,
much indicated that they would.
which stinks for us, and that was a miss not bringing him in.
Yep.
But I think Juwan Jennings for 22 mil a year, I'm not into, man. I'm not into. I just don't think I think he's a decent player. I got a different guy. And I like your point about Mike Evans, Bob. I don't think he makes it out of Tampa Bay. I got Romeo Dobbs, and I know he's not USA doesn't have him listed as a fit, but I think Romeo Dobbs is He's got a nose for the end zone. He's super talented. He's got great hands. He just gets open and he's got good ball skills. He's 6'5", big body. I think he plays opposite Terry. And I think if you're looking to move Terry into a more all over the field role and you want to have a true X to kind of complement him, you have Dobbs there. Dobbs can be your true X. You use Terry as a Swiss Army knife, and then you have Jalen Lane to take the top off, provided he catches the football next year, which let's hope he can make some progress on that. Then I think you've got a nice group. I think Romeo Dobbs ties this situation together a little bit better than a Juwan Jennings, and I think he has a
Yeah,
much
I like that.
higher. He's also young. He's 25, and that's a situation where there's so many receivers in Green Bay, and they've kind of ran this like wide receiver one by committee situation. He's never had the opportunity to get enough targets to really jump. But then you see those games. I mean, I've had him in fantasy for a couple of years now, so I'm a little biased. But you see those games where you go, Romeo Dobbs had 3 touchdowns today. Romeo Dobbs had 150 yards on 7 catches and 2 scores. Like he has those games where he just explodes. And if you add a guy like that to this offense that can be almost like the Juju Smith-Schuster to your Antonio Brown, right? That second option that punishes you for overcompensating on the first option. We've never had that opposite Terry. That's another thing. Like we've been saying, you got to feed Terry 20 targets a game, and you got to get him a better second option. We've been saying this for the entirety of this podcast lifetime. Who knows if it'll actually happen? But I like Romeo Dobbs and where he kind of fits into the rest of the market more than anybody else. And one last name I'm interested in is Hollywood Brown. That's
You liked
another name I'd
Hollywood.
be interested in. I'm high on Hollywood Brown. I like him. I feel like he's been underutilized in Kansas City, and he's got that speed, man. He's got
I
that
know, but I
speed that
think I think
really.
he reminds me of Jalen Lane. That's my only issue is like we got the small, quick twitch receivers, speed guys, and I don't know. I mean, I know you like him. He would not be. I'm much more interested in some of these other names we've rattled off. I love that your Dobbs take. I think either him or uh, you know Jawan Jennings would be guys that I'm would be excited about. Um, Mike Evans, I think less so, not because of the impact, like I said, in 2026 that he could have, just the fact that, he's really, really nearing the end of the career. And if you were going to be upset about signing Terry McLaurin, who's going to be 31 next season, why would you go out and get an older receiver like a Mike Evans? But it's a fair point. I think the other guy that I would be really excited to get is Brees Hall. I think I would
Ooh,
be super excited to get Brees Hall because I think that when you look at
would be
what
fun.
we need in the running back room, he is just he is that dynamic pass catching guy, can do damage in the running back room, and as a running back, and if you like, um, your room that you have already in Bill, and you want to bring back Chris Rodriguez, I think he would just be a great, great addition. He's one of the guys in the top 10 of this list that I think I would overpay a bit for. And I was kind of surprised he wasn't tagged to the Commanders, although I guess officially running back isn't viewed as a position of need for our team, or not near the top of the list. I think you've got to add weapons to this offense. And he's a weapon that I think would be a great addition to that offense.
I like it. I like Travis Etienne better for the exact reasons you said. I think he's a better pass catcher. Um, but and I also think he's half the price. That's another part of the
Yeah,
factor.
he's further down the
Um,
list for sure.
he's also
Well,
three
what's
years
his
older,
age? 27?
27. Yeah, I mean, how often
Yeah,
do you get? Look at
that's
the
not
look at
old.
the.
That's not old.
No, it's not old, but look at the history, man. When you get an opportunity, when these blue chip running backs have been acquired, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, these guys have changed the way the franchise that acquires them looks after the fact, and it's
Either guy
all
would be a
been
great
positive.
Austin Eckler replacement, right? like,
Oh,
and that
way.
it
I mean,
would be
they'd be way more than that.
an upgrade, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what would get you excited about either option. I'm biased about Brees Hall though. I want Brees Hall.
If you're bringing in Brees Hall, you better expect Brees Hall is going to be getting 15 to 25 touches a game. So
The problem with
you
that,
should expect that,
the
which I
bottom
think would
line
be
is
great. But I'm saying he's
you,
much more than an Austin Eckler replacement. He would be running back one at that point.
I, I I think you could do a committee situation with Bill there easily. I don't think I don't know that Hall is the workhorse type. And I think it also gives you another year. That's a good thing because as high as we think we are on Bill, I would say we would all agree that we need to see more. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I think you can't. I think
So
it would be a massive amount of hubris to just say that Bill, because he had a good game in LA and another good game, a month and a half, 2 months later in a meaningless game on Christmas, to say that he's your running back one at this point.
yeah, and
I think
Rodriguez
that'd be
seems to be
crazy.
an ascending guy, but he's a little limited in the pass
Yeah.
game, you would say, and not necessarily an explosive back. He's good to get you that. I think he's great at finding openings and getting you that what's there and maybe a little more, yards after contact. But I honestly think you need another, I don't know if you call him premier running back. Paul's going to be pretty close, but someone that can contend for RB1 minutes. And I think that's how it was setting up with Austin Eckler. Remember, RB1 to start this season was Austin Eckler.
Which is an idiotic plan because there's only one way that was ending at his age with that amount of touches, and it's exactly the way it
It's
ended,
hard to argue
unfortunately.
that point.
Um, which no disrespect to Austin Eckler, it's just like, what are you thinking? Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
love the guy. I was upset that that happened to him, very upset. Um, but I think overall, one last question, and then let's wrap this thing up. You taking Brees Hall or Kyle Pitts? Because they're both going to cost you about the same. And I don't think you spend premium on tight end and premium on running back.
I go Brees Hall. That's me. I go Brees Hall. I just think a dynamic running back like that can be a pass catcher, what he can do for your offense. I know. Now, obviously, if I could package Brees Hall and Isaiah Likely, I assume your question means I don't get Likely either. Uh,
Yeah, I think you don't
yeah,
spend the. So you can
yeah,
either do Brees Hall and Ben Sinnott, or you can do Bill and Kyle Pitts slash Isaiah Likely. What's your pick there? One of the positions we stay with, because I don't think they spend high on both.
yeah. I mean, you probably would have to go Pitts or Likely in that scenario.
Agree, agree.
Yeah,
But maybe
logic
there's a
taking
way.
over.
Maybe there's a way outside of free agency for us to address that running back position. We'll talk about that next
Yeah,
week. We'll
there's an
do some
interesting
draft talk.
topic, and I want to get into it more next week. But if you think about where the defense is and the amount of holes you have to fill, and also I think people forget how big an impact injuries were last year, right? And again, we'll talk about it more next week. You know, is going in all in on offense the right strategy? Yes, you've got to upgrade defense, but are you closer by getting a couple of these premier guys, premier weapons on offense? Are you closer to having an offense with Jaden Daniels that is tough to stop and in a sense helps your defense, right? In other words, when you go top end of what you're signing, obviously if you get a Pitts and you get a Brees Hall and a Likely, it certainly seals your deal on what you're going to do in the draft, right? You've got to go defense high. Yeah, I think Adam Peters has indicated that they've got to upgrade this defense, and I certainly feel like that's going to be this organization's priority going into agency. But there are pieces missing on offense that must be addressed as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to discuss, and we'll get into it next
Yeah,
week and the coming weeks. We got
teaser
plenty of
for next
airspace
week.
to fill here. So, without further ado, guys, or without further ado, goodness gracious, without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thank you all for another great week, and hail to the Commanders.
Hail.